Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.com.
And I'm Patrick from Tested.com and TechThing.com.
And we are here today with another product review. This one you guys have been waiting for. I know it came out last year, but we wanted to get some in-depth, long-term testing on it. We are, of course, talking about the new 4th gen Apple TV.
Big year for set-top boxes, especially Q4, the Roku 4, the Apple TV, the 4K video. Oh, actually, wait, this one's not 4K video.
No, a bunch of a 4K, Amazon Fire, but not the Apple TV. But it had been a long time coming since the 3rd generation.
And I was laughing because as somebody who started out with the giant old school Apple TV, then the 720p Apple TV, then the 1080p Apple TV, I was kind of laughing because somebody's like, I don't understand why they didn't just go with 4K. And I'm like, because they'll get you to buy another Apple TV.
That's right. They look at the market, they see what the majority of people have, and their processor and their software is made to run on 1080p. So let's get down to some of this nitty-gritty. The box, it's still the puck-shaped box. We're not back to the old days. It's not a dedicated computer. It's still an ARM chip.
Yes.
So you have what's essentially the iPhone 6 or 6 Plus CPU, the A8, inside here. There are 2 SKUs.
Yes, a 32 gigabyte and a 64 gigabyte version. It's $150 for the 32 gigabyte version, $200 for the 64 gigabyte version, which you probably aren't going to need unless you are an adamant, full-on Feral Games player, which probably brings us straight to what is the most important thing about the Apple TV 4th generation. It
now finally supports, like your iPad or your iPhone, apps.
It doesn't support all the apps.
Not all the apps. Specifically made Apple TV apps. And they did release an SDK and some developer units ahead of time, ahead of release. Now, about 3 months after the release, or 2 months after the release of this device, your base apps are mostly there. It is a streaming box, just like your Roku, just like your Amazon Fire TV. You got your Netflix. You got your Hulu.
Yes.
You got HBO.
Showtime.
Showtime, Fox, FXX.
Major League Baseball.
Yep. All that stuff. You don't have
Amazon Prime.
No Amazon Prime Video. There's a little bit of a dispute, a fight going on there.
Well, the rumor is, Apple TV got delisted, got removed from the Amazon store because apparently if you're Amazon, you want to make sure that, Amazon Prime customers have an optimal video experience and you bump off non-Apple, it's okay. It's delete expletive weird because they got rid of Apple TV they basically kicked Apple TV out of the Amazon store. At the same time, they embraced the Roku 4, which has a big Amazon Prime button on the front of it, which I find irritating, but we'll get into that in another review at another time. But part of what's so strange about that is the story from inside the qualifications lab is that there is an Amazon Prime application coming for the Apple TV.
It's submitted, waiting for approval.
Right.
They may have patched it up. I mean, Amazon knows that they want to get people subscribed to Prime. They want to be platform agnostic, regardless of their business squabbles.
They want to be money. They want to maximize their money making. Slightly more than they want to be platform agnostic.
So you got apps on here. We talked about a lot of the content apps for all the way from HBO to PBS. There are also games apps on here. Now the apps are limited to about 200 megs download size.
It's essentially the Apple TV is Trojan horse is probably not the right phrase for it. The Apple TV is the spearhead for a new SDK development kit that allows the operating system, the tvOS operating system, it's not technically iOS, to completely manage what is stored locally. And in theory, if you own enough games that have a large enough collection of graphics or code or whatever, it could force you to reinstall that game every time you want to launch the game.
Smart management.
Yeah, it was smart management. So if you, like I said, if you think you're going to have all the games, get the 64 megabyte version. If 90% of your lifestyle is watching video, just get the cheap one, the 32 gigabyte version.
That's right.
All the games have to work with the Apple remote, which is why so many amazing iOS games are not present in the Apple TV store.
Now, it does have support for dedicated game pads. You can get Bluetooth game pads to work with it. But that's an interesting thing they set out to developers because they wanted to have this lowest common denominator be the remote. A game that may work only well with a gamepad may get crippled or nerfed in some way, the gameplay, because it needs to run without the gamepad.
Well, let's pause for a second and talk about the remote and the pad on the remote, because you know a lot of the games do not function. It's kind of like the Android TV devices, where you know if they put a game controller in the box, if you didn't grow up with a PS3, you're going to find navigating really frustrating. This, at least, is in a number of ways an improvement over the old school Apple TV remote.
Now, which way do you find? Did you get over the hump of which ways it pointed up? Some people have said they pick it up and they think this side is the swipey side, but it turns out it's actually the matte side.
For the first 2 months, I was 50-50 for picking it up the wrong side. I'm probably now 1 in every 3 attempts to pick it up, I pick it up the wrong side. And it's frustrating. In terms of actual, you know, physical cues on the remote, it kind of sucks because the remote feels just as good either way. It doesn't naturally fall into your hand. And the biggest thing is I don't really think this, you know, from a gaming perspective, and if you're moving games that are primarily touchscreen based, this makes sense. Other than that, it makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, the remote does have more functionality, and the functionality comes primarily in 2 ways. One is, of course, this touchpad.
Yes.
So as you see in the UI, it's really responsive. Direct connection between the remote and the Apple TV. It's going to be almost one-to-one. You can you see in the UI there's the parallax effect. You can actually move icons, like micro movements on icons up and down. That shows you how accurate this touchpad is.
And it's
great.
It's a nice visual indicator.
And then there's more buttons. There's a home button now, in addition to the menu button.
Yes.
Menu is still back.
The home button is my favorite addition on the entire Apple TV, followed by the volume controls on the remote.
Yeah, volume controls as well. And of course, now there's a microphone button because there's a microphone built in. There is a version of Siri on the Apple TV. It's not exactly the same Siri you would get on your phone.
No.
But it is Siri. And also to point out, the remote, the older remotes will still work. If you have an old 3rd gen Apple TV, that silver, the metal, aluminum remote, you can still pair that with this. If you have an Apple device, an iPad or an iPhone, you can download the remote app, which did not work at launch with the Apple TV.
That was really frustrating.
It does work now. You can actually swipe up and down through your Wi-Fi connection. But Siri search on this.
So yeah, it's kind of funny because they managed to put the Siri button, microphone button for Siri, so close to the play and pause button that I find a lot of people, especially in the early days, at least in my family, are hitting the Siri button and then getting really frustrated when Siri pops up. Siri's really strange because, and I should also say, compared to the original voice search on the Amazon Fire TV, where it was like, we're going to show you the paid version of this, even if you can get it for free on Amazon Prime, they're fairly platform agnostic. So it'll give you results from Netflix. It'll give you results from other places. It will allow you to search for the weather, but still, if you're used to asking Siri, like, what is the speed of an unladen swallow?
Or create reminders for yourself or alarms, that's not going to work. It doesn't tap in that same database. Now, what you can do with Siri, like you search for content, like finding content, especially when this is not like your cable box. It's not, Apple doesn't have, they don't hold all the database. It's all in Netflix's servers, Hulu's servers. It's their app front ends. What they've provided to the developers, though, through their SDK is a way to tie that in a Siri search. So I could say, for example, let's try this. Let's try Fargo. Now, you got the search results. It's smart enough to know that there's, in Apple's database, which is not IMDb, because Amazon owns IMDb, you have Fargo the movie and the TV show. And let's say I want the TV show. Now, Apple owns iTunes. They're going to want to sell you this if it's on iTunes.
However,
it also taps into Hulu.
Which I think is a really smart idea for Apple. Because, I mean, in theory, they could have gotten away from that, but I think it's kind of stupid to not do that. I also noticed it's not listing the, it doesn't list the movie at all.
Well, it did. I chose TV show.
Okay.
Yeah, if the very first search result on the bottom, you got your option, right. And then you got your TV show, and what I like is that this interface that we're right now, which is really beautiful, it has all this database information that Apple has scraped or has been provided. I can actually, when I click an episode, let's say I want to see episode 8 of Fargo season 1, and I chose Hulu, it launches the app and goes hopefully directly to the episode.
Which is really nice. It can be a little frustrating to navigate through that iTunes interface when there are 6 or 7 seasons.
Yes.
And it wants you to fling your thumb to the right over and over and over again until you get the right year.
Well, a perfect example is if I do Game of Thrones, which is an HBO show, of course. Here's something interesting. You have HBO two versions of HBO if you have them logged in. Because there's HBO Go, which is if you pay for cable and you buy an HBO subscription, that's the digital component. But there's also HBO Now,
which is what I usually get.
Which is if you don't pay for cable or DirecTV, and you can just pay just the
flat monthly
fee. Two separate apps. It's interesting. It's a little weird because one you have to sign in, but everything else is the same.
But it does a pretty good job at dealing with both of those, which I give them credit for.
Yeah. So I can go directly into HBO's interface, and it launches. I like this directly into the content. I'm not then parsing through HBO's interface to find their television show, then Game of Thrones, then the season. It goes directly there. That's nice. The home button will take me home, of course. If I tap it twice, which will actually lets you. It's basically the home button on your phone. You can actually jump between applications.
I'm going to say it again. The home button is my single favorite addition to the remote control, followed by the volume control buttons. From an ease of use standpoint, it is so nice. And actually, like you pointed out, the double click makes it vastly easier. It's not like dealing with sort of DOS states like you were dealing with on the previous Apple TV, where you're like clicking back up, then you're opening something down and you're drilling back in. It's nice to have it functioning like a modern operating system.
But just like how the Apple TV manages storage dynamically, it will also manage the states just like on the phone dynamically. It will occasionally need to reload those applications, or if you can actually swipe up. If I double tap the home button, I can actually go and say close PBS and then have that relaunch from scratch if it's not running well. But there's a lot of things to press actually. You press the touchpad to activate. The back button is the menu button, and there's a home button, and there's volume, and there's play pause. But it all ends up being fairly intuitive.
They've also managed to make it, even if you have fairly tiny hands, it's not too hard to hit both everything from the play pause button to the top of the trackpad and manipulate everything else.
You can also adjust sensitivity. You can go into your remote and say, I want to be fast, medium, or slow in the responsiveness. There's your volume control. Something interesting I also noticed is that obviously HDMI out. You have Ethernet. There's 802.11 AC built in here. The USB, you can't plug in a USB device to load files.
Essentially, the USB is for later use. That's pretty much all they've said.
Audio-wise, you actually have the default setting that I would recommend everyone turn off, which is reduce loud sounds. Default for this is on. It's a dynamically adjusting equalizer.
Could you open up one of the movie apps again real quick?
Absolutely.
Or HBO Go or something? Part of what's interesting, if you scroll down from the top of the remote, or if you start a video. Can we start this without getting a takedown notice?
I think maybe at least 5 seconds. Let's try it. Let's do spoiler. Let's do why not?
Quick, hit pause.
In the playback setting. So you can actually swipe down from the top.
This is really nice, especially if you have roommates, if you have kids, and you want to, turn on subtitles or something like that, or choose the speakers you're using. I thought it was really nice they started taking advantage. That's as much as I want to be irritated by the touchpads in place of regular sort of D-pad buttons. They did a good job of taking advantage of some of the edge-based gestures that you don't get otherwise.
And even scrolling, your scroll marker is actually...
Scrolling took a while for me to get used to.
Oh, really?
I still find myself pausing, scrolling to where I want to go, and hitting it again.
It does snap to your last place, though.
Yes, which is
that
nice.
marker right there. And actually, this is just the 10-second preview video that tells you the HBO rating.
If you're not particularly dexterous, you are probably going to find the first 2 weeks with this remote control incredibly frustrating. If you have a fair amount of manual dexterity, it's not too bad to get up to speed on it really quickly.
Yeah. Are you playing a lot of games on this?
We are basically, it's funny, I've played a lot of Crossy Road on it.
Which is what they demoed. That's like the go-to, the Pac-Man of the Apple TV.
This is a fantastic game for small children, and I find myself playing it on the phone a lot. There's one called Lumino City, which is a puzzle-based game, which even my wife has got into. This is obviously the full-on, it's obviously a Frogger clone.
Yeah, right.
It is super simple. It is incredibly engaging. And it's funny, instead of sliding it, just tap when you want to go forward.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no. I'm terrible at this game. Yeah, it's bad to capture. But anyway, the graphics look good. I mean, running with the A8, you're going to get parity with basically what's going to run on iPhone 6 or 6 Plus. You know, you're not you are technically a generation behind, but you're not going to feel like you can't run the latest games.
For a set-top box, it's probably running as well as anything short of the Tegra-powered Android TV boxes from NVIDIA, you know, which have all sorts of other issues. Part of what I found frustrating is a lot of the more visually compelling video games don't work particularly well with a trackpad or the controller. And that was really interesting because some of the ones that are most visually compelling because they're like, I'm some sort of cyber thief in a future of something, and you go to try to use it with that control and you're just like, well, this is incredibly frustrating and boring. But I mean, in terms of the actual set-top box, especially compared to like the Roku 4, I think the graphics and the sort of palette of games here are pretty fantastic.
It also has what I believe to be my favorite Plex app on any streaming set-top box right now. The Plex app for the new Apple TV it's gorgeous. I'm using it for all my RIP movies. You get a lot of great metadata. It even pulls trailers. You know, you have tons of information. You can change your settings for all your streaming, your encoding.
Is this streaming from your house?
Is this streaming from my house?
Can we watch Inception?
Maybe later. I don't want to get pulled down.
I love that movie.
For piracy. But you have I think it's just a great Plex app for this one. That's not available on the Apple TV third generation.
It's interesting because unlike the Apple Watch, which had so much promise, and then developers sort of puked out one round of applications, and then they just kind of stopped coming. It's been nice to watch this steady trickle of applications come out on Apple TV as it moves forward.
Yeah.
I assume as the user base grows.
Yes, and one last thing it does have, which when it was announced, I thought it was it's a novelty feature, is the video screensavers. And I've actually grown really accustomed to them. I really like them. So Apple has commissioned a bunch of high-quality 1080p aerial shots flown over cities, landscapes, and all sorts of interesting places that play. I don't know exactly how long they run, but
30 seconds, 2 minutes?
I think it's a couple minutes. Definitely a couple minutes. They're beautiful, like helicopter and drone shots.
I mean,
that fly over San Francisco and New York, and they're lovely. And London, and there are new ones being released all the time. Actually, you can actually have your Apple TV set to update them daily and download the new 600 megabyte video file.
They're compelling enough that I've had people in my family be like, "Oh, what happened to the?" It's like it's gone.
Yeah, you can't queue them up. You can't just say, "I want to watch that one."
Right.
It literally is. It's a screensaver.
Yes, and it's a very nice screensaver, and it's a nice touch.
Yeah, and that little nice nice touches, the UI polish, that's stuff we come to expect from Apple. Of course, it's going to work great with your Apple devices. It's going to work great as an AirPlay device. You know, if you're in the ecosystem already, it's not a big stretch to buy this over the Apple TV third generation.
That said, you know, you might want to wait until there's one particularly compelling app, or if you get to go to an Apple store or a Best Buy or wherever's nearby you and get hands-on with a remote control. If you start thinking the remote control is really fascinating, because if all you do is watch movies, or watch television shows, there's not a huge progression from last generation Apple TV and the current generation Apple TV.
We're still in this world where set-top boxes are basically app devices for a bunch of independent streaming services. When you talk about cord cutting right now, there really isn't a ton of a comprehensive buffet of cord cutting options that's price competitive. If you want ESPN, if you want HBO, if you want Showtime, that you couldn't get with a DirecTV or Comcast. People were hoping, I think, that when Apple announces they had made those partnerships and made that and gave you a buffet, a pay Apple, but they didn't come up with that.
And that's really curious to see if and when that's actually going to come out, because everybody thought like Apple's going to embrace this box. It's really powerful. It's got all this memory because Apple's going to do live TV and this is the future. And no. It does a whole bunch of stuff really well. I think that outside of the sliding alphabet menus when you're trying to plug in a code, I think everything they did with the interface is fantastic. Being able to download applications has been desperately needed. I would like more of the general iOS application, sort of population ported over to tvOS, but I think it's going to happen slowly and gradually over time.
And those applications feel more than just channels. Like on some of the other devices, it really is just a reskinning of what has been around for a long time. They're going to get more robust functionality on the Apple TV, not just the shopping stuff, but in terms of actual software and games.
Yes.
I think if you're buying a device where you have kids and you want to have an Xbox or PlayStation for them, and you want to let them play some games on the big TV, this is going to be a good bet for them.
As long as they don't have a friend with an Xbox or a PlayStation. But that's a whole other conversation. One
last thing, I can't believe we omitted talking about this, and it's on the tip of everyone's tongue. Yes, we know searching with the on-screen keyboard sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks.
That's what I was saying before. The on-screen, everything with the on-screen keyboard is a nightmare.
Yeah.
Password entry, entering in your email, because they did this thing where you're like scrolling all the way over.
All the way to the top.
And then you've got to scroll, and it's just one long line. I still can't believe they haven't updated it to patch that. Although maybe Johnny Ives feels that this is the only aesthetic.
And it's inconsistent because it always pops up on the top. It's going to be overlaid on top of other UI. It works well in their native, in the OS on the home screen.
Well, it works.
It's visible. It's visible on the home screen. Doesn't work well, but it works even less well in other apps.
You can ride a three-legged horse. It just may not be your best option on a hill.
With the new remote compatibility, you can type it in on your phone.
I'm surprised. It's funny because it felt like a bunch of stuff wasn't entirely finished when they launched it. And there wasn't a huge, there was a very incredibly small amount of games. And some of the early games were kind of like, well, somebody's finished something, so we're going to make it available. And that was a little odd. Again, at this point, there is a pretty large slate of applications that are available right now.
What do you want to watch? How about The Rock?
Oh, yeah.
Where's The Rock the movie?
Keep scrolling. Keep scrolling.
Imperfect. An imperfect search solution. It calls up The Rock, the actor, but not the movie The Rock.
I could have sworn.
No.
Not even.
Yeah, there you go. But you can't
Escape from The Rock?
Movie The Rock. There you go.
Oh.
There you go. Yeah. So you can break Siri on Apple TV once in a while. It still needs figuring out. Like we said, if you're embedded in the Apple ecosystem, I don't think you can go wrong right now.
If you have $1,000 worth of video and movies tied up from the last 5 years of Apple TV ownership, it's an easy one to go towards.
But otherwise, maybe want to hold off, check out the maps, find the killer app for you, or take a look. There are much cheaper options if you just need a Netflix box.
Oh my goodness. We should probably talk about those at some point.
We will, absolutely. So we're going to be back with more set-top box reviews in the coming weeks. But until then, where can people find your other reviews, podcasts, other content, Patrick?
Please come check out TechThing, TechThing.com or youtube.com/TechThing. And I've got a new, actually home theater-centric show I do with Robert Heron, a podcast called AV Excel.
Awesome. And of course, you can find all of our stuff on Tesla.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. But until next time, I'm Norm.
I'm Patrick.
And we'll see you next time.